Hi there, you are welcome. In this class, we will learn about anchor point, and we are going to discuss its importance and power in animation. Anchor means to anchor a ship, to tie a ship, and secondly, to see how it looks. When we create any layer, the layer has a base point, having an anchor point with it, which looks like this. Second, we take this rough idea about how it works. Then we will see by doing practical. It's like a hub. Just as a wheel has a central hub, in character animation and in After Effects, there's a similar central point called an anchor point. The main difference is that with a wheel's hub, we can only place it in the center. But in animation, we can move the anchor point around. The question is, how do we do that? Let's see it now. Suppose we make this shape layer. As soon as we create a layer, an anchor point is automatically generated by default, and that anchor point is placed on a certain defined point, so we can adjust it according to our needs. Where there is an anchor point, there will be rotation around it. From there, the scale of the layer will be up or down, and other properties of the layer will also be animated from there by making the anchor point as the base. As we create this layer, its anchor point is adjusted by default here, in the middle of the composition. I don't manually adjust the position of this anchor point in my first try, in my first animation. I leave it as default. So you should see the difference in how the animation looked when I left the anchor point at the default, and then you should see the difference in how the animation looked when we manually adjusted the location of the anchor point. First, we're going to do our animation at scale. We're going to keep our layer selected, and then we direct press S because we only want to do the animation at scale. So for that, we're going to do the first keyframe at 0. To generate keyframe at 0 seconds, where we select the scale, click the stopwatch next to it, and our first keyframe is generated. We go to frame 15 and generate our second keyframe, and we set the scale value of 140. A little bit I would down this layer from top. Now see, our first animation has been made. Now I want to manually adjust this anchor point anywhere in the composition. So then you have to see how the animation looks. To manually adjust the anchor point, we go into the toolbar and select the pan behind tool. Remember, our anchor point can't be adjusted manually unless we select this pan behind tool. Now this tool is going to help us to manually adjust the anchor point. And I'm adjusting this anchor point to the left side of this layer. Now see how the animation is looking. When we scale up, it starts from where our anchor point is located. Now I move this anchor point to the right side of shape layer, and you'll see how it changes our animation. Similarly, we adjusted our anchor point on the right side, so on the right side it is scaling up the shape layer in such a style. Now I delete the animation of scale, and now we do animation over the rotation, which will give you more clarity. We select our layer and press R because we want to animate only on the rotation. First we make the animation by placing the anchor point in the middle of this layer. For that I select the layer and right click. We go over transform option. Here we are getting different options. If we want to adjust the anchor point in the middle of the layer, then here we get an option, center anchor point in layer content. It helps you a lot when you want to adjust the anchor point. Generates the first keyframe of rotation while at 00 seconds. We generate a second keyframe, just going over 15 frames. We set 90 in the second value of rotation, because I want to rotate it at 90 degrees. You should notice the difference between how the animation looks when the anchor point is in the middle of the layer and how it looks when the anchor point is adjusted elsewhere. Amazing. This is the power and importance of anchor point. Now we adjust this anchor point on the right side. Now see how the animation looks like. Amazing. Now we adjust this anchor point at the bottom of the composition. You'll see how the animation looks like. I hope you are learning Adobe After Effects fast as a beginner. If you have any questions related to this Adobe After Effects course, you can ask in comments. Subscribe this channel to learn motion designing from absolute beginning to advanced.